Hello, everyone. I just got back from King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, and boy, it is a fun film. It's a great film. It is uh, a Dungeons and Dragons player. It's like their wet dream. It's really cool. The uh, the the opening scene where it shows how um, King Uthor is murdered. In that case, it is because I'll get into it. Um, how or little Arthur, like little kid Arthur, escapes, and how the sword is, it is where it is. That's worth the price of admission by itself. It's really cool. There's like these, what's the guy's name? So the backstory that it gives you is for centuries, humans and mages are living cohesively and in peace. And if you don't know what a mage is, it's essentially a magic user. So if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, probably know what a mage is. If you watch high fantasy in any way, shape, or form, you probably know what a mage is. Basically, they can cast spells and whatnot. But there is a mage that attempts to take over the kingdom, and he's riding on this giant elephant. There's like three of them, and they are massive. They look like a dinosaur, like the size and scale of a dinosaur, except like bigger. Like they were. Those were awesome scenes. They had like wrecking balls attached to their trunks, so when they sling their trunk around, it would like slam into buildings and stuff. It was really cool. It was just so cool. And then earlier, when I did the announcement that I was going to review this, I said that it was directed by Edgar Wright, and I was wrong, per usual, because I don't fact check. It is directed by Guy Ritchie, because in my mind, Edgar Wright and Guy Ritchie are the same person. Don't know why that is. Edgar Wright did direct Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, but Guy Ritchie has, I would say, a similar style when it comes to directing. Guy Ritchie directed Snatch, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Rock and Rolla. That's his recent stuff, filmography. Sherlock Holmes 3, all the Sherlock Holmes movies, actually. Let's see what else he did. That's his more notable stuff. Let's get into the characters. So Charlie Hunnam plays Arthur, who is after the opening scene is adopted by a group of girls working at a brothel, and he, lives his childhood and teenage years working in the brothel. Not, you know what I mean? Not working in the brothel, but working in the brothel, like as a busboy and stuff. And he's kind of a schemer, you could say. He's got like side deals going on where he's in a network with kids that are like pickpocketing and, pocketing some of the stuff that they pickpocket. And he accumulates wealth and power for the most part. Everyone calls him boss, which is really cool. It was like a sign of respect. Like everyone in his neighborhood and like all of the people in his crew. It was really cool. Astrid Burgess Frisbee played the mage. I was kind of disappointed with her character. As a magic user, I feel like she could have done way more than what she did. She was essentially a glorified druid in a sense that she could essentially cast Speak with Animals at will, which is a D&D spell. This whole review is just me talking about D&D and how much I love D&D, because there's so many parallels between some of the classes in Dungeons and Dragons and this movie and how they are portrayed. Jude Law plays the uncle of Arthur, named Vortigern. Vortigern. That's an interesting name. He numerous times sacrifices family members, loved ones, in order to gain power, and those scenes are kind of gut-wrenching, especially the last sacrifice he makes. He has like essentially a mage tower, which is another D&D thing. It's just like their sanctuary. But in the basement of it, there is this kind of like lake little thing, and there is like this squid octopus lady. Actually, there's like 3 of them, and they like crawl up onto the side and like roll, and then like female bodies like emerge from the tentacles and stuff. It's really trippy. Yeah, really cool CG too. He basically sacrifices family members to gain power, and that's how he he and the mage from the beginning opening scene are in cahoots. They commit mutiny against the king, King Uthor, who's played by Eric Bana, and they come to an agreement that Morden would rule half of the kingdom, something like that. They described it, but it was during a scene where my mind was all over the place, just like an action scene. It was really cool, so I didn't really concentrate on the dialogue a whole lot. But he and the mage Mordred were in cahoots, and his character, Vortigern's character, transforms into the equivalent of a Death Knight in Dungeons and Dragons. He gets like this, like super bulked up, and then he has this cape that is like on fire constantly, and it's just like cinders, and like chunks of it are like floating away, so it's all like smoky, and it has like this awesome like effect on it. It's just like as it's flowing in the wind, parts of it are catching on fire, and then parts of it are breaking off. It's really sweet. And then he has this awesome helmet with like a skull face and then ram horns. And he has a double-sided scythe, which is really cool. And he's just a badass. It's so cool. So cool. Guy Ritchie just knocked this one out of the park. Like, he's such a visual director, and I know what you're thinking. Duh, Tanner. That's what directors do. They visualize things. But when I say that, it's plain as day when you watch his movies. He emphasizes points in the fight where, like, it's where he wants you to look, and that's like the main focus of the scene. Like, every fight scene, there are portions where Arthur will grab the sword with both hands, and the sword has like runes and glyphs on the blade, and when he grabs it, like, time slows down, and then the runes and glyphs light up in a blue, and then his eyes turn blue, and it's really sweet. And then, like I said, time like slows down, and he just mows through guys. Like, there's one scene in the 3rd act where he mows through an easy 75 guys, and the rest, there's like a group of 100, and he just takes down 75 of them like that. And the rest of the guys just kind of like drop their swords and like kneel to him, and he just walks right past them. No big deal. It's so cool. All the fight scenes in this movie are incredible, especially the last scene where he takes on the Death Knight. Let's see. Other notable cast members. Relatively no names, except for Aidan Gillen, which, if you watch Game of Thrones, you'll know him as Peter Baelish. He is I'd call him an archer. He's not an arcane archer like a D&D character, but he is a archer, and his character is really cool. This movie heavily focuses on Charlie Hunnam, and I thought he did a great job. There are couple scenes where you could feel his emotion, and there's one scene in particular where he throws Excalibur, the sword, into like a river or a creek or something, and it starts to drop to the bottom, and the Lady of the Lake, which is in the story, grabs the sword, and then like it cuts to him sprinting through the woods, and he gets tripped up and lands in a mud hole, and like the lady like reaches up through the mud and grabs his hand and like pulls him down into the water, and like starts talking to him and like telling him and showing him what will happen if his uncle does gain his full potential and powers through dark magic and stuff like that. And it's really cool. Like he pulls the sword out of the mud and he just holds it up and just screams, and like time slows down, and it's like that. It's, I don't know, I love shots like that where it's just like focused on their face and they're just like blood curdling screaming at the top of their lungs, and he's like holding the sword up in the air. It's really cool. It gave me chills. There's a lot of shots like that in this movie. Like I said, every fight scene has like points where it'll like go full speed and then it'll slow down so you can see the impact of swords. Where his sword will break other swords because it's the Excalibur. Oh my gosh, Guy Ritchie is incredible. I love his work. Yeah, that's kind of it. I didn't write a whole lot of notes. Just kidding, I don't write any notes, even though my mom tells me I need to write notes because I just ramble, but I feel like that's, I don't know, I feel like that's what I do. I just ramble. And we're at 12 minutes already, and I'm already over my time limit. So, again, my feelings, I loved it. If you're into high fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, if you played the Witcher series, if you play Dungeons & Dragons, which I feel like I'm in a select group of people that actually do that, I think this is a fun movie. It's not story heavy for the most part, but it tries to be, but it's, I mean, you all know the tale, Knights of the Round Table, Arthur pulls the Excalibur from the rock, which is an interesting plot point too, the rock and how it's formed, how the sword gets in the rock. It's cool. So yeah, Guy Ritchie does it again. This movie's fun. Go watch it. It's really cool. It's really cool.